Which one is the perfect pocket knife? Guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Mars Survivalist, trying to tackle this favorite question among knife enthusiasts. And it's the kind of thing that gets people talking for hours. Threads in knife forums go non-stop for several pages. And you know what? Always, eventually, the wise, level-headed guy comes out and says there's no such thing as a perfect pocket knife, because there's no perfect knife, because needs are all different, and what's perfect for someone is not perfect for someone else. And that's the safest reply to the time-long favorite question of which one is the perfect knife, or in this case, the perfect pocket knife. I happen to believe that's a little bit of a safe reply, bordering on cowardice, so as to not assume responsibility for a reply. If you want mine, I'll just give it to you right away. The perfect pocket knife is this one, the Leatherman Charge TTI. This is the perfect pocket knife, and I'll make a very strong argument as of why that is. If you don't want to waste 15-20 minutes, it's going to be taking me to do this video, and just want to get over and do something else in less than 2 minutes, that's it. Now, if you want to understand why this is and where I'm coming from with this, then stick around. First of all, we have to get rid of certain bias. The perfect pocket knife should not be influenced by personal preference due to collectability or simply liking the aesthetics. That would be a good example of custom-made blades, such as this one, made by an Argentine knife maker, Ogun. Perfect pocket knife, well, small enough but not perfect. Very nice. Perfect, I wouldn't say so. What about this one by Mariano Gugliotta, Black Widow, roach belly type of blade with a very nice scrimshaw, showing the Black Widow there. Sure, for some collector, probably would love such a piece. What about a military knife collector? Would someone like that love a knife like this one, the Machete de Artillería 1898? Sure, but you know what? It's not even sharp. Great big knife, would do very nicely if sharpened and such, but this is the kind of thing that you should not let should not influence your decision. So if someone says perfect for me is a knife because of collectability, because I just like the aesthetics of it, because I like the name attached to it, that shouldn't be a factor. Now, quality, geometry, functionality, those are things that do come into play. All right, size will, of course, it will be a factor. We're talking about the perfect pocket knife. Has to fit in a pocket. So all these blades, as nice as they may be, they don't go along. Of course, the perfect knife for someone that's thinking of using that knife for bushcraft activities, or real woodsman type of thing, where a bigger knife is definitely needed, because it's going to be approaching the tasks of a small axe or hatchet. Yeah, a big knife like this would do very, very well. In that case, if I'm limited to those parameters, you can make a very strong point for some of the bigger Bussy knives. Bussy being a brand that uses fantastic steel, and the design in general tends to be quite sound. I would go for this one in particular, the Bushwhacker Mistress, because it's not just big, but it's also thin enough so as to not be too heavy, which may be an issue with some of their blades. The Esi Junglas, very close to being the perfect large blade. Yeah, the only thing is that, of course, you have a better steel with Infi, even though 1095 is more than decent enough. You have even a better handle than the Bussy, in my opinion. These could be great knives. What about the cold steel Bowie machete? You can buy 10 of these with for what it costs to buy a junglas, 20 compared to what it costs to buy a Bushwhacker Mistress, and it's gonna be doing 99% of the tasks either of these knives is capable of doing. So, you know, price would be a factor in that case. But if we're talking about the perfect knife, neither collectability, neither price should be a factor. The perfect knife should be limited to how good it does for a variety of tasks. It's in terms of materials used, the quality of the materials, the execution, and the design that is being applied. Now, if we're thinking of pocket knives as smaller blades, sure, you have some very nice blades. The SRK, Bussy has a couple of very nice blades there as well. These are excellent, and we could talk about being perfect in terms of medium-sized blade. But even the smaller ones, like the Mora, even though it's pretty small, fixed blades as pocket knives, they just, at least in my opinion, they just don't cut it. I don't know of pocket knives, of fixed blade pocket knives that are small enough so as to be realistically comfortable or realistically carryable on everyday basis. It has to be something that fits in your pocket and can be used all day long. Okay, and there's where we're somewhat limiting our choices. Anything, we're already talking about having to be a folding knife of some sort, so we're gonna be looking more towards that kind of thing. Okay, even within that, we could easily say, okay, you know what are you gonna be using a knife for? Opening packages, envelopes, boxes, mail, cutting string, tape, little else. Anything would work for that. Even a cheap little knife like this one, a $1 knife, would do that. And that's true, that's correct. This little $1 knife would do most of those things without any inconvenience. I've actually used one of these, you know, an exact same knife, just like this one. I used and trashed that thing for years, you know, so much that I didn't even bother bringing it with me, because I had to, you know, fix it with a little bit of wire because it was falling apart. Stainless steel, not great, but good enough. This will do most of those things that a pocket knife is intended for. $1, you know. You could even say it has the advantage of, if you lose it, if you break it, you're really not losing anything. Now, perfect? No, by no means. So this idea that just anything that cuts, any knife, it could be perfect for one person or another, I think it's just too much of an assumption. I don't think that's correct. Because if someone comes and tells me, you know what, this is the perfect knife for me, this is the knife that does everything that I want it to do, and it costs just $1 and such, and I will say, okay, that's fine for you. But you know what? If I bring up Spyderco Endura 4, this knife is much better than this one. Oh, but this does everything. Okay, it does everything you want, but the steel here is better, the quality of construction is better. If you have to use it beyond what you would be normally using it for, it will perform better. It has a clip that it's adjustable on 4 sides, which you don't have here. The clip is better. Every single thing is better in this knife than in this one. So this idea that just anything that cuts could be the perfect knife for someone, that simply isn't true. And we're not going to be playing the safe game of saying, yeah, well, the perfect knife for someone that it's you know, cutting fish, a fillet knife, or for someone that it's cutting you know, wood with a bigger knife. Let's talk about narrowing down the options, and our parameter being the perfect knife for ordinary tasks, or some of the things that you're likely to need a knife for in somewhat of a more extreme or unconventional need. You know, what does this mean? A knife that you're going to be using for everyday tasks, sure, reasonable enough, that makes sense. A knife that will do a broad amount of functions that it may be called upon. You know, if I ever have to use that knife for prying, for using it as a screwdriver, using it as something else that the knife was not intended for, those things I keep into account as well. So it's a general purpose knife, which would be the perfect general purpose folding knife. And in this equation I'm going to be throwing in multi-tools as well, because it still falls within that parameter of something that is compact enough so as to have in your pocket all day long. And I'm not going to be going for strictly defensive use knives, you know, something like zero tolerance 0-200, great knife, perfect knife for what it does. It's a little bit of a heavier knife, very fast in the hand, construction, materials, all great quality. The quality of the design itself, made by Ken Onion, you know, you just don't have any complaints about it. Now, we are talking about something more specific. We are talking about a knife that is leaning towards the defensive type of use. And in that case, I could make a point about a bigger knife being even better, like the Cold Steel Vaquero Grande. This is a knife that is going to be piercing. We have more blade. It's going to be slashing, even better than the great 0-200. You know, because of that recurved edge, you have a huge, you know, massive blade. It doesn't get much better than this in terms of a folding knife. You know, it's even competing with some of the fixed blades in terms of the wound channel it's capable of creating, how well it's going to be piercing, how well it's going to be slashing. Sure, fixed blades are generally better, but man, for a folding knife, very hard to argue against the Vaquero Grande. Now, this is going for specifics. This is going for a knife that it's probably going to be going for defensive applications, and we don't want to do that. We want to have the perfect general use pocket knife. Absolutely everything from fixing an electric appliance, using it for opening the famous mail boxes, envelopes, cutting string tape, all those normal things, and beyond that. Could I use this knife as a screwdriver? You know what? People have done that for ages. You could maybe, you know, find your way so as to remove a Phillips screwdriver, even a flat screwdriver with its tip. But it's definitely a knife with a clear application in mind. All right. If we want a knife that it's gonna be used for a number of possible tasks, then generally speaking, we're gonna be leaning towards multi-tool knives or Victorinox type pocket knives with multiple small tools. So which one of these would be best? And what makes it the best? What makes the Leatherman Charge the best? Well, the quality of construction is definitely there. You cannot argue against that. The quality of the steel of the main blade, which, as you see, it's, you know, easily accessible, single-handed open. You know, opens like a folder. You have great S30V steel. You have a liner lock there. If you're not even happy enough with that, you have an extra blade there. You have all the tools that make the Charge and the Wave as great as it is. Could you have an argument about maybe this other knife, also by Leatherman, the Sidekick, being very good? Yes, and I've said so many times, but it's not better than the Wave, than the Charge. What about the Wave, which is pretty similar? Excellent knife, but not better than the Charge, simply because you have more comfortable handles, you have better steel being used here. And yes, I can hear you screaming through the through the monitor. These two basically do the same thing. The blade geometry is pretty much the same. It is in fact the exact same. They even have, you know, the same locking mechanism. Sure, absolutely, but this is more comfortable. The handles are more comfortable. The steel quality is better. And if we're talking about the perfect one, all these little things that are not subjective to personal likes or dislikes have to be taken into account, and money should not be an issue. So by all means, the better steel wins over the one that's not as good. There's tons of multi-tools. There's lots of them. Now, I don't have to buy each one of them so as to know that the charge wave configuration, the kind of tools that you have, it's the best combination there is. And for a knife that has a purpose of use being so broad, you know, a knife that you're gonna be using for absolutely everything. Gonna be preparing a sandwich with it? Yes. You're gonna be opening boxes and such? Sure. What if I have to use my knife to open maybe a crate, something that would snap a pocket type blade? Well, I could probably use my zero tolerance to pry better than the definitely smaller blade in the Charge. This blade is going to be prying better, but at the same time I actually have a large screwdriver here which will allow me to do just that without the risk of breaking, you know, the blade and weakening the locking mechanism. You know, I have a tool for that in the same multi-tool. Anything in terms of screwdriver and such, all that I'm going to be doing better. In fact, if it's something, a prying task that I have in mind, where more brute force is necessary, I could even get away, and I have done so many times in the past, using the pliers themselves. Just snapping them in there, prying like that. This locking mechanism in general is going to be stronger than just prying on the blade. You know, prying with the pliers, it's going to be better than prying with the blade in this knife. In terms of it being used for defensive purposes, I have no argument there. Sure, this knife or the cold steel, if I have to use either one for defense, I have no doubt. I understand that fully because of the grip, because of the blade. This is definitely better than the humble Leatherman Charge in defensive applications. But this is no, you know, this is still quite capable of limited amount of defense. If I have to put all that into the equation of how likely it is to be used to end up being used for one thing and the other, this would do excellent as a defensive blade. This would do somewhat average, or yeah, I wouldn't even say poorly, because being kept very sharp with a nice tip, if it comes to that, you could use it. Same with some of the other knives. You know, the Mora is not a fighting knife or anything like that, but you know, the tip penetrates nicely, the blade cuts like you wouldn't believe. You could use this as a very adequate defensive use knife, and the Charge goes along those lines. It has a blade that, even though not as nice as a bigger defensive purpose knife, it's still quite respectable. Now, there's really nothing out there that would do as well in as many possible uses as a Leatherman Charge. There really isn't. There's great multi-tools out there. There's bigger ones, there's fancier ones with different mechanisms and such, but the combination of tools, the quality of construction, you just cannot beat the Leatherman Charge for that. Again, perfect knife for for the you don't know what situation, for the everyday use situation, the everyday application of the opening the boxes, cutting tapes, cutting ropes, cutting cord, cutting bigger ropes, it's gonna be doing that just fine. And if it comes to prying, you're gonna be prying with it. If it comes to being used as a screwdriver, you're more than suited for that. If it comes to cutting wood, it's not gonna be chopping like a bigger blade, but you have an actual saw, you have an actual great file there as well. You have all those things. All right. The only thing that you could argue against it is, okay, that's just fine, but because of my personal circumstances, I'm limited and I'm not able to carry a tool of this size. I have to go with a smaller tool. I have to go with maybe a pocket tool. There you can make a case for some of the Victorinox smaller models. The Hiker. The Hiker is a great model. Absolutely. You have a very decent blade. If you ever have to pry something, you're not going to be using that blade, but you have a very decent screwdriver there, which of course works as a screwdriver as well. You have the Phillips screwdriver, and the Soldier is really not that far from it. You don't have the Phillips screwdriver, but you have a very decent non-locking blade, if that's a restriction you have to keep in mind. So these are of course good alternatives for that kind of limitation, that kind of limitation that goes beyond what we are talking about here, about the perfect pocket knife. Beyond those things, if you're, maybe you're saying, okay, but I'm limited to something even smaller. I cannot even have that. I have to go with a keychain knife, something like the Classic by Victorinox. Yeah, between the Classic and the Mini Champ, absolutely no doubt whatsoever. This is what I use myself. Actually, it's not the flashlight here. It's not working, which is kind of interesting. This is the one that I keep. This is the one that I use. Definitely so. The Midnight Mini Champ is better than this one. And even if you try to make the argument about, well, yeah, but it's fatter, it's bigger. Yeah, but it's still a keychain tool. That you cannot argue against. And in terms of keychain tool, this one is better than this one. And if we are going for the best keychain tool, I think it comes down to these two. I think either one of these, you could make a very strong case for this one or this one being the perfect keychain knife, the perfect keychain multi-tool. In terms of the perfect pocket knife, and this would include multi-tools or multi-blade tools like Victorinox, the Charge just does it. There's really no other pocket knife out there that would do as many things as well as the Leatherman Charge TTI. Yeah, sure, there's a new model that has a little bit of a different scales design, but still, the quality, titanium, excellent blade steel, the execution of how it was made, and the general design, it's just unbeaten as of right now. Folks, that's my take on the perfect pocket knife as of right now. Maybe you have a different opinion. As always, share it, as long as you do that respectfully in the comment section. You know, again, you could say that this is the perfect pocket knife for you. The $1 cheapo little folding knife. Yeah, this is the perfect pocket knife because it does, it does everything I need, and it does so for $1. Sure, there's nothing this knife can do that you cannot do just as well or better with the Leatherman Charge, and that goes for most other pocket knives out there. And even though you may find particular pocket knives that may excel and be better at specific tasks beyond what the Charge is capable of, maybe a thin blade, a thin folding knife would be better for filleting fish, sure. But when it comes to a multi-purpose use pocket knife, perfect not for just one or two things, but for everything. Same for defensive purposes. Are there better defensive use folding knives? Absolutely. But when it comes to the general purpose knife, for everything and anything you could possibly think of that life may be throwing your way and you just don't know exactly what it is. Leatherman Charge TTI, folks. Guys, that's all for now. Share the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Take care. See you on our next video. Have a great day.